What if I told you that there's an anime wrapping up right now that somehow manages to completely capture the complexities of our current world? A series written by a person from the other side of the planet who used Western human history to intelligently and eloquently explain the heart and mind of our species and how it led to those of us living as we do in the 21st century. How our problems are different, but they're not new. That anime would be Orb on the Movements of the Earth. Imagine risking your life for a single desire. A desire, a question, an idea. A goal so dangerous that simply speaking it aloud could lead you to being spit roasted as a heretical menace. A question that's answer will inevitably be so obvious that in the future any child could answer it. Set in a fictional 15th century Poland, Orb tells the multi-generational saga of those brave enough to challenge everything their world believed to be true. A story of those whose love for the stars and desire for truth led them to a very dangerous hypothesis. In this world, the hegemonic power's geocentric view wasn't just accepted science, it was divine law. The Earth stands fixed at the center of God's creation, and questioning that or any other mandate was blasphemy. But what if that entire idea was wrong? Provably wrong through observation and math. What if God's Earth was moving? What if the world destined for the sole creatures made in God's image was not the center of the universe, but just a piece of a larger picture? I want you to think about something that you're really passionate about, something that keeps you up at night, right? That burning curiosity which drives you to learn more and more about this thing. Now imagine that passion being your deepest, darkest secret. That passion, the knowledge you've gained from study and observation being considered the quickest way to wipe you off the census. This is the reality for the characters in Orb, where gazing at the stars with too many questions in your heart could cost you everything. That the stars, the movements of the planets, the very fabric of the universe itself are not things to be pondered, but immutable mandates from those with absolute power. Don't get me wrong though, Orb is not just another historical drama about religion versus science. At all. What makes this series extraordinary is how deeply it understands and expresses the fundamental nature of humanity. Each character has their own personal philosophy, their own reason for risking everything in pursuit of the truth, to see a bigger picture. Some seek knowledge for knowledge's sake, others to change the world, some for political power, others for personal redemption, and some even for money. Yet they all arrive at the same revelation, that absolute power does not equate to absolute truth, that the search for truth is never ending, and the quest for that truth gives life meaning. It's not just about whether the Earth moves around the sun, it's about humanity's unbreakable instinct to question, to seek, to understand, even when every force in society demands silence. Even when society threatens the ultimate punishment. This is a deeply nuanced human story, one that asks why people will go against every instinct of self-preservation to chase and reveal the truth, no matter how long it takes. Now let me be clear, Orb is not an anime built to please. In fact, I would even go so far as to say that it gave me a terrible first impression. The character animation for Madhouse was not their finest work, and the only reason I even recognized it was from the studio was because of how amazing the night sky looks. It's very reminiscent of the sky in Redline, another one of their productions. At first, the social and scientific concepts seem dry on paper, more like a history lesson than a story, but I've never been more wrong about a series. Orb demands your respect. This show didn't just surprise me, it completely blew my expectations out of the water and had me obsessed with finishing the journey it sets you out on. So let me be abundantly clear, this anime is worth every single minute of your time. It is a hidden masterpiece that is only just starting to get the recognition it deserves. So without further ado, this is Orb on the Movements of the Earth. Let's do the pop-off. What's up, party people? It's Mukbang Mike here. Know y'all been missing me. Don't mind me, I just gotta put a little bit of my ranch sauce up in this. Anyway, I'm here with this week's sponsor, Factor. I don't know if you guys have been to the grocery store lately, but it's getting kind of pricey. So do I have a deal for you. Look, I don't know what your job is like, but when you have to watch an entire anime in 1 week, do two 2-hour podcasts, and a whole watch party, not to mention write a script, voice a script, and edit a video. Things can get pretty hectic. So thankfully I have Factor. It's a meal delivery kit service. I'm sure you heard of those before, but the special thing about this one is that the food all comes prepped, ready to go, and all you gotta do is stick it in the microwave. And then you got yourself delicious, chef-crafted quality meals that take 2 minutes to make. I have 10 minutes until I gotta record a podcast, and usually I wouldn't be able to eat in that time. At least not something that's good and healthy for me. Also, you get a weekly menu of like 35 meals, which is why I'm eating chicken bacon ranch. This also saves me from getting takeout every day, which is what I used to do, and wow, that costs a lot of money. So let's talk about that deal, right? Because the last thing you want to be doing these days is going to the grocery store. Like, have you seen the price of peppers? Alright, so what you want to do is you want to head to factor75.com. You can use the link in the description. You pick all your stuff, and at checkout, you use our code 50 Bonsai Pop. What that's going to do for you is get you 50% off your first box plus free shipping. Where else are you going to get 50% off real food nowadays? So again, please, you can get a week's worth of food if you go to factor75.com, use our code 50 Bonsai Pop, get 50% off your first box and free shipping. In this economy, it's an offer you literally cannot afford to refuse. So thanks Factor for helping us and helping out the people. And thank you guys for giving me your time. Now back to the show. There was a time in the West when religious doctrine, when the orthodoxy of the church ruled everything. It had absolute power, absolute authority, and wielded it with an iron fist. It had the ability to launch holy crusades, to decimate its opposition. Its rules and laws were divine mandates, its teachings taught to peasants not by the written word but by oral repetition. And that is where we find ourselves at the beginning of Orb. The series initially follows Rafał, a young genius in 15th century Poland, a boy who was orphaned but brought in by a scholar who educated him. Now this is a kid who simply wished to go with the flow for the hope of a very comfortable future, but Rafał is forced to make a decision. Will he take the easy route and become a theologian, or will he follow his real passion, astronomy? But after meeting an imposing and disfigured heretic, he is fed a deadly thought. What if the Earth moved? While initially and deeply opposed to this idea, his continued interactions with this heretic who withstood life-altering torture in pursuit of discovery eventually cracks his wall. What if this heresy was the truth? What if it can be proven? What if the Earth isn't the center of all creation, but instead moves around the sun? Now, I think we all know where this story ended historically. The church, the dominant authoritarian power of the era, did not just reject this knowledge, they labeled it heresy, the ultimate crime. To question the mandate of absolute power isn't merely scientific disagreement, it is a challenge to God himself, to the word of he who is incapable of mistake. And for that insult, all burn. Now, obviously, Orb follows fictional characters in an alternate reality, but its social politics and themes parallel the ones that we had in our real history, including, of course, the heretical nature of heliocentrism. Obviously, Galileo was famously prosecuted and convicted of, quote, strong suspicion of heresy for publishing a book that argues geocentrism versus heliocentrism. He was sentenced to penance and imprisonment at the discretion of church inquisitors after his trial. And while this is seemingly barbaric, and it was, it must be understood the gravity of belief, of faith. See, rulers rely on faith. They rely on the belief of the people they rule, the belief that because this person has ascended a throne, they rightfully earned it, that through merit, they indisputably surpassed all others to reach the pinnacle of society. Through that achievement, they have earned the right to dictate the truths of this world. They depend on the people's blind faith that their wills as rulers are justified through their indisputable ability to see what ordinary people cannot. And to disagree with that is to have the audacity to move a mountain alone. And alone, you'll be crushed for it. But what if you had indisputable proof that this authority was wrong, that perhaps they did not ascend through merit, that they did not have divine and absolute knowledge, that their way of ruling was possibly corrupt and self-serving, that this strong figure of a king was nothing but a lowly human just like you? What would that make you? Would that make you dangerous? What makes Orb transcend simple historical drama is that it's not about a single man's struggle. Instead, it portrays something far more profound, an internal cycle of human curiosity coming up against the walls of established power. The search for truth isn't owned by a single person or confined to one moment in time. It flows through humanity and history like a river that can be dammed but never fully stopped. It's unavoidable, inevitable, and people in power know that. Their only option is to suppress it via terror. So while Rafal is the first protagonist in the series, Orb isn't just about one child's struggle. The Earth moves round and round. The series is about a cycle, a relentless, tragic, yet awe-inspiring cycle of human curiosity and its ability to escape the spiked yoke of oppression. Because the search for truth doesn't belong to one person or one time period, it belongs to all of us who reach for it, and no matter how many times power crushes the grasping hand of the curious, the rebellious, or the discontent, another hand will reach out to take its place. Orb takes place over a 50-60 year time period. There are different main characters, and they do all have different philosophies. Now, this sounds like a recipe for poor character growth because the viewer has less time to become attached to who the characters are and why they do what they do, but somehow it actually works, in part because so much of the series is an exceptionally well-written philosophical debate between vastly different personalities united by a single goal. A goal which often leads to violence and terror. More often than not, you're going to find two people on screen talking, but the tension built throughout this show heightens each scene to the point that it doesn't matter if the action is intermittent or the exceptional art is interspersed. It doesn't need constant visual stimulation. The exceptionalism comes from the way these characters' minds interact and the story is laid out. Each conversation carries the weight of not just different life philosophies and motives, but the threat of annihilation for the audacity to question an uninformed interpretation of doctrine. There is not a single sentence wasted. There is no filler, no lulls. The writing is flawless, and the hero of the show is not a single character, but the idea which refuses to die. And obviously this conflict between science and faith is nothing new. It's been a battle for centuries. It's shaped history and continues to do so to this very day. But Orb doesn't take the easy route of just demonizing religion and being done with it. In fact, the vast majority of the characters in this show believe in God, or are even part of the church, including those who believe in heliocentrism. The problem is the institution, the subjugation of thought and progress where the evil lies, not in the hands of God. Instead, Orb asks, what happens when faith becomes a cage, when belief is used to suppress rather than uplift? The show doesn't argue that faith is inherently evil, but it does show the dangers of unquestioning obedience, of accepting something as truth just because an authority says it is. For instance, in 399 BC, Socrates was erased for quote-unquote corrupting the youth. Giordano Bruno was introduced to the experience of a grilled hamburger for proposing an infinite universe. Mohammed Bakir al-Sadr was put on a shirt for trying to progress Islamic democracy. And of course, Reverend Martin Luther King Jr. was put in the ground because he fought for the fundamental rights and freedoms of African American citizens. Belief in God isn't the problem. It's questioning the way God is used by the powerful. The threat is an understanding that the beauty of the world and of life is sullied by those who wield God or perception of divine right as a weapon to benefit themselves. Orb strives to encapsulate that with his characters and settings. It reminds the viewer that the search for truth and a tight grip on your convictions has always had a cost, and that for each individual of note who makes the history books, like the men I mentioned before, there are millions of unnamed individuals lost to history who led up to their success, who created that ladder for them to ascend to those heights. The cost is clear to each character who picks up the mantle in this series. Usually the glint of truth is relayed by nothing more than a leftover memento. And even knowing that cost, they keep searching. They keep striving to find a way to reveal the discoveries that they've made, fighting for it, dying for it. What makes truth worth such a terrible price? Because truth is the ultimate freedom. When everything else is stripped away, possessions, status, security, truth remains the one thing that belongs to all of us. Kings rise and fall, empires crumble to dust, but truth endures. And that relentless pursuit of truth, that's the essence of being human. If there truly is a God, if humans are touched with divinity or something like that, then it was given to us to seek understanding, to refuse to accept ignorance, and to fight for heaven on Earth. What struck me about Orb is how it shows this struggle transcending time itself. The research on heliocentrism belonged to people in history who passed it down to Hubert, who passed it down to Rafal, and so on and so forth. A broken, tortured line of predecessors and successors fighting not just to prove the knowledge that they had found, but for the fundamental right to think freely. The beauty of this show is that it revolves around the idea that the Earth moves, and by proving this theory, the Earth will move culturally as well. Not only is it literal interpretation, but it's also metaphor. By risking it all in an attempt to speak truth to power, heliocentrism becomes the key to unlocking new forms of thought, freedom, and autonomy. It's proof that power is built upon belief, upon faith, and that power can be dismantled by those not clouded by blind acceptance of what they're told. That foundations of authoritarianism can crumble once it is proven beyond a shadow of a doubt that they're built on lies. I'm just gonna cut the music. I got some shit to say. This anime, Orb, coming out as it is right now, is incredibly important because at its basic level, it reminds us that the Earth is still moving. You and I have the pure chance to be living together right here, right now in the 21st century, for better or for worse. And we're all moving together and becoming history. In 100 years, they're going to be writing about us. They're going to be writing about the people from the 2020s who faced incredible odds and how they dealt with them. So yes, the Earth is moving, and lately it has been one hell of a ride. And I think the reason that Orb resonates with people so much right now, specifically Americans, is because we understand fundamentally at our core what it is like to be told a lie, what it's like to be raised on a fundamental lie and have that lie told to you over and over again, that America is the greatest country in the world. Yes, it has great wealth and it has great power and it has had great people, but the basic principle of greatness is working towards achieving progress and prosperity for everybody. That is a target that we have repeatedly missed as a nation. We sit on stolen land. We call ourselves a nation of immigrants, yet every single ethnic group of future Americans have had to come into this country and deal with the pain of exploitation. We pride ourselves on freedom, but the foundation of the wealth of this country was built on the backs of slaves. We laud democracy as the most fair and civilized form of governance, yet women and people of color had to fight and die for their right to vote. America calls itself moral, yet it supports the eradication of entire ethnic groups around the world with using its own citizens' tax dollars. It calls itself godly, but it inflicts pain upon its neighbors. America praises the capitalist economic model as fair and just, but still over 43 million Americans are suffering in poverty without food and without health care. What America has is baseless pride. It has been opportunistic, predatory, selfish. It generates enough food to feed the entire world, but hoards it to itself, throws it away. It is the richest nation in the world, but the vast majority of the wealth is held by a handful of men, while single mothers have to work 3 jobs just to get by, paycheck to paycheck. America is a dragon. It is violent, temperamental, and desperately will do anything it can to cling on to its massive hoard of treasure. The future of the planet means nothing to America. Let it burn if it makes profit for the profiteers. We have been told a lie, because what America truly has is hypocrisy. Freedom of speech, they say. Freedom of religion, they say. But when college students protest the systematic destruction of an entire people, they are abused and arrested by the police that are supposed to protect and serve us. America cheers when books are banned and burned. And when these failings are called out, the people who speak the truth are laughed at ignored, suppressed by algorithms that are owned by the super rich that work for the state. This two-party system of ours is supposed to work as checks and balances, but make no mistake, both parties are working towards the exact same goal in different ways, and that is supremacy, control. Control of the narrative through state-run media, control of the people through the undermining of the public education system and limiting higher education to those who were born under lucky stars, control over reproductive rights, control over birthright citizenship, control of the underclass using the idea of meritocracy to force people to assume the accused blame of being lazy, of being unable, of their disabilities, their sex, sexual preferences, self-identity, or the color of their skin. And now America has reached the pinnacle of its pride and audacity. These tactics that have always affected the minorities, people who have always understood what it's like to be looked down upon, are now affecting everybody, including you. You see, America has spent most of its history ignoring these inconvenient truths because they only affect the minorities who have to deal with living under the boot of the malicious and powerful every single day of their lives. You may have thought yourself chosen or invincible at a time, but now nobody is safe. These issues are no longer kept to the shadows. Instead, they are proudly stated to vigorous applause, stated by men and women in the American government who are ready, willing, able, and happy to use the power that they have, not just against the rest of the world, not just against perceived enemies, but against Americans themselves. They have used the broken American political system, which has rotted over the years, to amass more money and power only from themselves while the people suffer, while Canadians suffer, while Mexicans suffer, while Ukrainians and Palestinians suffer, and yes, while Americans suffer. They have weaponized the fear, anger, hate, and despair of this country's most isolated people to prop up a man who is going to and is using them as fodder. But these are people of faith, people who were brought up, indoctrinated from day one to never question the words of somebody that they see as a strong, powerful man. They are suffering, but their faith requires the propagation of obvious lies. This is but a trial. Their Lord will pass down unto them the promises of cheaper eggs. Their peasant mindset is used to sow division amongst the people, they, the chosen faithful, versus the heretical opposition, while the oligarchs watch and collect their payments upon this social war that they created. People tell me, or demand, that I stay in my lane, that anime has nothing to do with politics, but I think Orb would beg to differ. Hell, One Piece would beg to differ. Talk about an anime that flirts with the idea of anarchism, fighting a tyrannical government, censorship, you name it. Even something as simple as My Hero Academia is a manga about society trying to deal with the equal division of power amongst the common people. Ignorance does not change the facts. My choice to speak up and speak out angers people who try to tear me down or illegitimize me by saying I have no idea what I'm talking about. Well, let me tell you that I've been in this game for an extremely long time. These things that I'm talking about right here, right now, are what have always driven me to do the things that I do, to inspire people, to educate people. Whether it's through video games, anime, music, there is always something to learn because the people who create these productions have something to say. There is no art without purpose. But part of being an educator is having the ability to admit that you don't have all the answers. I can see what is happening. I can know why it's happening, and I can look through history to learn exactly how it happened. Through daily, constant observation of what is going on in the wider world, I can say that there is nobody coming to save us. It is up to us to save ourselves. Because with enough people, you can move that mountain. You can turn a castle into a house of cards. So yes, I could use this platform that I built for pure profit, pretend this is entertainment for entertainment's sake, stay in my lane, follow the algorithm, hit the trends and cash in, avoid what most people within this industry consider unnecessary heat. But somebody somewhere gave me an insight, an inspiration, an idea, a truth that I couldn't ignore. Something I couldn't let go of no matter how hard people, society, this stupid industry tried to beat it out of me. Speak truth to power and never relent. Scream it as loud as you can from the highest place you can possibly reach. Let it ignite the torches of those who need the fuel to fight fascism, authoritarianism, tyranny, and the suppression of a dream for a better future for everyone. To make that thing that you were told when you were little not a lie, but the truth. I'd like to thank our patrons for giving me the privilege and opportunity to speak.